Hi, my name is Ayshia and I am a dancer in the piece Reflections by Charlotte Coulter. I really enjoyed working with Charlotte and I really enjoyed the process of the whole piece. So every rehearsal I came to, there was a well thought task set out that me and other dancers had to take on and help within the research of this. So to many rehearsals we came to improv tasks, which we would come up with improvisation sections from a word, a thought, an idea, from research that we'd found in books, as well as connecting with emotions and doing this. As well as that, we would come to rehearsals and learn new material that Charlotte had created for us, as well as learning technique that inspired her for her work. So overall, I really enjoyed the process and it was very well organised, very well thought through, and it wasn't stressful, and she was very understanding of the piece as it was quite a dark piece and could have been a real struggle for some people, but she really understood and it was enjoyable to work with something that was very dark and take this towards yourself. So the most challenging part I found was trying to connect at the beginning, as I didn't understand much about shame or guilt, and to me I thought as though they were a very similar thing until Charlotte explained and was speaking to us about her research that she had found. So I thought it was very challenging trying to connect these two emotions, which are completely different but at first felt so similar, into a character which at the time was myself, until I had chosen to turn myself into a different character because it was difficult to try and personally connect shame and guilt to myself. And I felt as though when it was myself I was doing it wrong, because what I might have felt ashamed for wasn't actually shame, it was guilt. So I chose to take on the role as a homeless person and create a storyline where I could define the difference between shame and guilt. But the most challenging part was definitely before I'd come up with an idea of being a character. So it affected me in the space because I was trying to portray myself and I didn't understand what I was trying to portray originally. So it affected me because I was dancing alongside other people that had ideas and were also confused about the thing and didn't know how to connect. So in the space it was a little bit awkward, as we wouldn't all know whether we were on the right track, but there is no right or wrong in this situation. So in the space it wasn't too badly affected, but it was also very strange trying to connect when it's something that in daily life we don't think about and connect too much. So as the piece progressed, I did become more aware of the space and how I fitted into the space with being my character. I felt more as though I had a meaning in the piece, as I was trying to connect to people, and the spacing of the piece worked really, really well with people's emotions, as people would be placed not by any force or anything, like it would just happen, and we'd find areas that would work really well together. And you'd have people exploring like the shame and the feeling that it's never leaving them, compared to someone that just feels guilty for a few minutes and then is fine the next. So it really started to come together, and now I was more aware of where people were and the emotions that they were giving off, which would help me develop my emotions at the time. Emotionally in the space, I think it was quite difficult to connect with at the beginning, obviously because I was trying to connect with myself and I didn't really know whether I was ashamed of something or guilty for something, and I didn't really think of anything that I could have been guilty or ashamed of that I would be able to connect with. So putting myself in like a different person's shoes and creating a storyline was definitely a way that I could become emotional. And obviously being emotional in the space helped me progress my movement and helped me express my feelings and emotions towards this. So I could really develop how I felt around other people and use this as a motive to carry on my story, because on my own I would be ashamed, but when people were around me I'd be absolutely terrified in case they found out what I was ashamed for, and they'd be ashamed of me as well, and if they'd make me feel more guilty for certain things. So I was definitely becoming more aware of my emotions in the space. So after this creative process, my view about shame is definitely different. I think before I'd never really thought of what shame could mean, whereas after all this, shame to me is something that will never ever leave you, and it's always going to be there in the back of your mind no matter how hard you try to get rid of it. Like, things in daily life will make you become ashamed of something that you've done, whether it's something small or little, but it's a personal connection that you have with something, and it's something that you're like deeply sorry that you've done, and it can be something that can get you down and keep you down for however long it takes until you realise you can get rid of your shame. Whereas now my view against guilt would be that you can feel guilty but you can be happy at the same time, whereas before I thought you'd just feel guilty and it'd be fine and it'd be over, and I still believe that now. I still think if you're guilty, after a while you'll get over it and you won't really think about it again, and if you do think about it again, you most likely won't feel guilty about it because it's been and done and it's what's in the past. And being guilty, I usually would find, and to me would be something so small and something that doesn't really matter that much. So you can be guilty at the time, but later on in life it's not that much of an issue. So I think my opinions on guilt have stayed the same, but shame has definitely changed because it was something I didn't really ever have to connect with, and connecting with it has made me realise it different and see what it really is about. So to anyone else doing a piece like this or taking part in a piece like this, I would definitely recommend keeping an open mind and being positive about this situation, because it can be very daunting, especially being young. If you're a young person in this dance, or if you had never connected with something like this before, it can definitely be difficult. So you have to see a positive outlook on it, and remember that you are doing it for a dance piece and it's not something to personally hurt a person, which some people would come across it as that way. And you have to remember that you have to only go as far as you're comfortable with, and if you need to take a step back, make sure you're aware and tell the choreographer that, so that they are aware, because the choreographers don't want to hurt you. They're just trying to get you to break out to this point, so it helps them with their research and helps them to connect the piece together. But I would definitely say have an open mind, because what I found was in the piece we had so much fun. Even though it's a very dark topic, we could bring a lot of humour to it, because a lot of things that we were ashamed of actually became, we were like, whoa, we don't need to be ashamed of that, like, it's okay. And we found like very few humorous parts in it that could play like a very significant role. Even though it's a very deep subject, we can bring a lot of alignment to it and make people realise it's not as deep and dark as people make it out to be, and make them. I'd definitely say my favourite part of the process and that I enjoyed the most was working with Charlotte. She really inspired me to connect with my emotions more, because it's something I don't really enjoy doing whilst I'm dancing, and learning new techniques that I wouldn't personally choose to work with. And it was really interesting, the research that she'd gone into and how much she'd researched about the project to help me and other dancers connect and really be inspired by the piece. So I really did enjoy working with Charlotte, and the whole process was really worked really well, and it was really good to work with her, and it was a big confidence boost knowing that I could do something that big, not realising that I could and never giving myself the opportunity to. So I really enjoyed it. Thank you, Charlotte.